Recording for us. Great, thank you. Okay, my name is Maggie Abel, and I'm the Senior Marketing and Engagement Manager for FSC US. Thank you so much for joining us for this session on the new Promotional License Holder Trademark Use Guide. I'm going to be leading this session, and I'm excited to have Karen Kaiser, Director of Marketing for FSC Canada, with us, as well as Nina Wong, the Acting Trademark Manager from the FSC International Trademark Team. She will be available to answer any questions you may have during the Q&A portion of this session. Since we are a pretty small group this morning, you can feel free to raise your hand if you have questions or type them in the chat, but we will wait to address all questions until the Q&A session at the end. So diving into the agenda here, we're going to start by introducing the new guide. We'll move into what some of the key changes are, and then we will go over times and next steps before ending with that Q&A session. Let's start by setting the stage a little bit with an overview of the various trademark documents within the FSC system and who they apply to. You can see that we have certificate holders are adheres to the revised trademark standard 50001, which includes a separate annex and a guidance document. And then we have our promotional license holders, which is this lovely group here, who have the FSC trademark use guide for promotional license holders. The FSC Trademark Use Guide sets out how organizations may use the FSC trademarks in promotional materials. It outlines processes to be followed and has examples. This guide applies to brands, retailers, and other organizations holding a valid promotional license agreement. And the revision process had four goals. First, to simplify and streamline the rules while maintaining their rigor. Second, to improve usability so promotional license holders can apply the requirements more confidently. Third, to ensure compliance with the trademark standard 50001, new legislative requirements, particularly around anti-greenwashing as well. And finally, to incorporate feedback received from stakeholders during the discovery phase that occurred in 2025. Okay, let's get right into the guide. So there were three main goals of the changes that you will see to this guide. The first was to make the structure more clear and user-centered. The second was to tailor the content specifically for current promotional license holders, again, so companies and organizations that already hold a valid promotional license agreement. And then third was to improve the user experience. Now we will get into each part of the new guide and what some of those key changes are. Part one of the guide is all about promoting with FSC and the general requirements to do so. This includes an updated trademark portfolio, revised compulsory elements, updated graphical requirements, and updated design requirements. We'll get into each of these in more detail here. So this is something that I hope you are all aware of, but we have phased out the use of the promotional panel and the Forest for All Forever mark for all promotional license holders. This decision was driven by anti-greenwashing legislation, like I mentioned previously, particularly the EU Empowering Consumers Directive for the Green Transition. The Forest for All Forever mark was considered a generic environmental claim as well as a future performance promise, both of which carry a high regulatory risk. Additional analysis was conducted in the US, Australia, China, Canada, Colombia, the UK, and Singapore, which helped lead to this decision. The phase out deadline for promotional license holders is September 1st of this year. And you may have already noticed that these marks have already been removed from the FSC Brand Hub. So they are no longer available to download from the Brand Hub, but the deadline to remove any existing use of them is September 1st. The promotional elements have been updated. Previously, only the FSC license code was required when the trademarks were used. Under the revised guide, four elements are now required every time: the FSC trademark, the FSC license code, a promotional statement, and the FSC website address. So this is an important change that needs to be embedded in promotional materials moving forward. Regarding graphical requirements, the size has been reduced to a 4 millimeter minimum and the exclusion zone was removed. However, elements can still should not overlap the FSC logo at all. And now there's more color variation allowed for the FSC logo, which is hopefully a positive for all the graphic designers out there. The FSC logo and the promotional elements should never be arranged in a way that resemble a promotional panel or an on-product label. So what does that exactly mean? The logo and the elements should never be grouped together inside of a shape or border, like you can see on the right-hand example here, as that is too confusing with it looking like a promotional panel or a label, which it is not. So make sure that they are separate and they are not included in any closed shapes or borders. Okay, so that is part one. Some key takeaways again from that. The FSC license code, trademark, promotional statement, and website now all must be included in your promotional material. And the Forest for All Forever mark, as well as that promotional panel design, are being phased out. So as of September 1st, make sure that those are not being included in your promotional materials. Part two of the guide focuses on navigating the verification and approval process. Things are more clear and streamlined, and eligibility and application process information has been removed. Again, because now this guide is focused on existing promotional license holders who already hold a valid promotional license agreement. So the application process eligibility has been removed and will be communicated separately for companies that are interested in becoming promotional license holders. This slide here shows the updated approval process flow. The process now has 6 clear steps, and we will walk through each one of them here in the slides that follow. The overall logic, however, of this process is unchanged. Promotional license holders will identify eligible products, collect required documentation, draft materials, and then submit for review and approval, and publishing is only allowed once final approval has been given. So let's get into what those steps look like. Step one is to identify the FSC certified products that you use or sell. Then you will want to check that these products are eligible. They are eligible to be promoted if they are purchased directly from an FSC certified supplier. The product is finished and labeled with the FSC label, and no further relabeling or repackaging occurs. Then you would collect the required supplier documentation, which I will show an example in the next slide of. This is either typically a supplier letter or a copy of an invoice where the supplier's certificate number is listed along with the correct name of the supplier and address, the FSC claim for each product, and then a clear indication of which of the products are FSC certified. So here is that example. You can see all of those elements are outlined here. It's important to make sure that you're verifying this information, particularly making sure that the name and address of the company listed matches with the certification number listed. And then you can see here too that we have a list of a few products and 3 of them are FSC certified, and that is clearly indicated as such with the FSC claim being listed in the line item here. So once the products have been identified and the required documentation has been collected and submitted, the next step would be to draft the promotional materials using the FSC trademarks. So again, making sure that all of the required promotional elements that we just discussed are used, and then if necessary, including a clarifying statement. So this would happen if, for example, in your promotional material, if it's a catalog, you have multiple products listed, some of which are FSC certified and some of which are not. You need to add a clarifying statement along the lines of look out for our FSC certified products. Additionally, if you have products that are available as FSC certified upon request, adding a clarifying statement reflecting that, again, along the lines of this garden furniture is available in FSC certified wood upon request. Okay. So here's an example of what that looks like in practice. So you can see here, there are a few items listed two of which are FSC certified, as indicated by the trademark use of the logo. The promotional statement is included at the bottom there, along with the FSC website address. And then we have the license code on the left-hand side, along with that clarifying statement. Look for our FSC certified dresses in our spring collection. So once everything is drafted and gathered, you would submit this to your TSP for approval. Your TSP is your trademark service provider. And in this case, it would be either FSC US or FSC Canada, depending on who you have your promotional license agreement with. At this point, your TSP would review, make sure that everything is in order, the trademarks are being used correctly. If there are any changes needed, your TSP will communicate that with you and work with you to make updates. And then once everything looks good, it would be approved, and then you would be able to publish those materials. And here are just a few more examples of what that could look like. We've got a social media post here, a flyer, and then a brochure kind of outlining again what that could look like using the trademarks in practice on those various examples. So key takeaways from this section, again, every promotional material must be submitted to your TSP for approval before publishing. And we are always here to support you during the creation and review of these materials. So don't hesitate to reach out whether you have questions on how to use the trademarks or if you're looking for inspiration or ideas on how to use the trademarks in various promotional materials. We're here to help you with every step of that process. Part 3 of the guide is about using the requirements in practice. So this section provides helpful examples and guidance for using the trademarks in printed and online materials, social media, and e-commerce marketplaces and online shops. For printed materials, all promotional elements must be included once per material. They do not all have to be displayed on the same page, and for example, multi-page catalogs, but they must be included in the same material. So you could have the trademarks used throughout the catalog, and then either the front or back of the catalog, you could have the rest of the required elements, including that promotional statement, your license code, and the web address. Here is another example you can see of what that might look like. Again, the trademarks being used to identify which products are certified, a clarifying statement, the promotional statement, license code, and web address. For digital and online materials, the 4 promotional elements must be displayed. There's one important clarification for websites. A website that does not sell certified products counts as a single promotional material, and the 4 elements would only need to appear once together anywhere on the site. So this would be if you have a website where your products are not available for purchase on your website, you could include the promotional elements on one page, for example, like you can see here on a sustainability page, and that would be acceptable. However, if you do offer your products to be sold on your website, if a consumer can purchase your products on your site, then the e-commerce rules apply, and we will get into those next. For e-commerce platforms, each product listing is treated as a single promotional material. So all 4 elements must be included on the product listing page. If you are using just the FSC initials or full name in the product listing title, you must include the term FSC certified. So for example, FSC certified oak chair, not just FSC oak chair. If the FSC trademarks, FSC website, or FSC license code are used in a website footer, you have to add a disclaimer such as, look out for our FSC certified products. So again, here's an example of what that would look like. Because this is a product page where something can be purchased, all of the elements need to show up here. You can see they're all listed out, and it could be in the description, in a pop-up or an overlay. Those are all acceptable, but that information must be on each product listing page if the products are available for purchase. If You are using the FSC logo on social media in an image. All four promotional elements must be included in the post. This could be either on the same image where the logo appears, it could be on a second image in a carousel post, or they could be in the caption of that post. But if the logo is used, all of the elements must be included somewhere on that specific post. If you are just using the initials or the name, there's a little bit more flexibility. The elements can be included in the post itself or provided via a hyperlink to a web page where those elements are listed. Each social media post is treated as a separate promotional material. So each time you create a social media post, it does need to be submitted and reviewed by your TSP. And one thing to note with social media is the registration mark is not compulsory on social media, as there are restrictions on some platforms around the use of those registration marks, the circle R and the TM. Some key takeaways from this section. Again, on printed materials, all promotional elements must be included once per material. Digital and online, all promotional elements, again, once per material. And if it is a website without a shop, it counts as one promotional material. Whereas if it is an e-commerce marketplace or web store, each product page is considered one separate material. And then on social media, as you mentioned, the registration mark may be omitted. The license code and website may be omitted if the post links to a page where they're included and it is just the name or initials being used. And again, each post is considered a separate material and needs to be submitted and approved as such. Okay, moving right along. So those are the main sections of the guide, and now let's get into some of the annexes. Annex 1 of the guide provides the promotional statements that you must use in your promotions. This list has been expanded and now includes statements covering how to describe FSC, how to describe the license, and how to describe FSC certified products. Here in this slide, you can see examples of how the promotional statements are structured. There are statements, as I mentioned, for describing what FSC is, describing your license, describing products with different label types, whether it be FSC mix, FSC recycled, or FSC 100%, and for describing FSC certified projects. So you should be choosing the statement or combination of statements that is most relevant to your material. And here you can kind of see a difference between what those would look like depending on what's being promoted and how it is being promoted. Promotional license holders can combine, shorten, or change the perspective of statements, as well as replace placeholders as long as they remain accurate, truthful, and clear. For example, you can merge two statements into a single message, use a concise version of a statement where space is limited, or shift from a consumer-facing voice to more of a company voice. And of course, you can replace placeholders in these statements. Product, you would include what the product is. For example, organization, you could put your company's name or our. And any adaptation must be submitted to the TSP for approval before use and publishing. Okay, on to timelines and next steps before we get into plenty of time for questions and answers. So with this process, the discovery phase ran from July to October of 2025, during which FSC gathered stakeholder input, established a working group, and obtained approval to kick off the drafting phase. The drafting phase then ran from October of 2025 to March of 2026, and then the revised guide was published on June 1st. Promotional license holders now have a grace period until September 1st, 2026 to update your promotional materials. And as of September 1st, all license holders should be using the revised guide. So what should you be doing after this webinar? First and foremost, make sure that you review the guide and all supporting materials that are available on the Brand Hub. Review your existing promotional materials to make sure they align with all requirements and submit any changes to your TSP for approval. You can find the helpful checklist you see here along with other supporting materials, including an FAQ document and a summary of the guide on the Brand Hub. And this outlines the main changes that you should make by September 1st, 2026. We are, again, here to support you through this process. So if you have any questions at all as you're working through updating your materials, please let us know, and we would be more than happy to assist. So this updated guide reflects ready-to-use promotional statements that can be adapted to your products, channels, and context, visual examples to inspire your campaigns, and show what good FSC promotion looks like. You are part of a global system of over 70,000 organizations, and the promotion you do about your products contributes to a trusted and recognized movement. And with that, I'm going to put our contact information here. I can go back to this slide at the end of the Q&A session again, so you can jot this down if you do not have our contact information. Again, your trademark service provider will either be FSC US or FSC Canada, depending on which organization you hold your agreement with. And here we have contact information listed out for FSC US. We have our general trademarks email, my direct email, and then my colleague Kate's email, and then we have Karen's contact information listed here as well for FSC Canada. And with that, we can go ahead and get into our Q&A. And we've got, like I said, we have Nina here to help answer any questions that I am unable to. And let's see, I'm going to take a look at the chat, but also feel free to raise your hand and Kate can help me make sure that people are getting unmuted and able to ask their questions. Okay, it looks like we had one question come through that maybe was already responded to. So if that is not clear, Andrew, please let us know and we can discuss further. But otherwise, I will give it a minute. If any additional questions come in, anyone wants to raise their hand, feel free to unmute yourself. We're a relatively small group today. Okay, I see one coming in from Lori. For the promotional statements in the guide, can these also be used for promotional statements on products? So on product use would be covered by the trademark standard. And there are, I believe, Nina, correct me if I'm wrong, there are separate statements that can be used for on product. And I think that's available in the annex of the standard 50001. Okay, we've got another question coming in. Okay, so this question is around trademark use management system or self-approvals. Yes, so that is still available. And I believe we're going to have separate documentation on what that process looks like. So a trademark use management system, for anyone who is not familiar, that is something for promotional license holders who have demonstrated a clear understanding of the rules and requirements around submitting products and using the FSC trademarks. We can work with you to set up a system where you would be allowed to self-approve those trademark uses, and then there would be, kind of spot checking auditing happening versus needing to submit every single use. So that is something that is definitely still available and that we could work with you on. And yeah, so there isn't information about that in this current guide, but that is absolutely something that is still available and can be discussed further. Give it another couple minutes here, thinking of any questions you might have. Like I said too, we are recording this message or this webinar, excuse me, so we will put this on our YouTube channel. You can always come back and take a look at this. And if you have questions that come up after this webinar, please feel free to reach out to us. Again, once we've wrapped up these questions, I'll put our contact information back on the screen for another moment. Okay. I'm not seeing any additional questions coming through or hands raised. I'm going to go back to this page. I'll leave this up for another minute. You can jot down our contact information if you don't have it. Like I said, if you do have any questions that come up after this webinar, please let us know and we would be more than happy to answer. Okay, and with that, I think I will let everyone go a bit early from this session then. Really appreciate your attendance and your attention to this new guide and the new requirements. We hope that a lot of these changes were helpful and will continue to be helpful as you use the trademarks. But again, if you have questions as you're going through this and updating your materials, please let us know. We are more than happy to help. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you all.